This story begins with a girl named Biol who was all decked up in her school uniform and heading off to school, bubbling with excitement. She was so thrilled that her enthusiasm was palpable. Just as she was about to leave, her mom stopped her, scolding her for not wearing her shoes properly. Biol didn't listen to her and dashed out of the house with a smile as wide as a crescent moon. But fate had other plans. The poor girl, brimming with happiness, stepped outside and she was hit by a vehicle, and she died instantly. At the time of the accident, Buell was blissfully lost in her world, listening to her favorite idol and singer Wu Ju through her earphones. Clutched tightly in her hand was a concert ticket to Wu Ju's event, which was supposed to happen that very day. It was her first ever concert, and she couldn't have been happier. But life, or rather, death, had other plans. As she took her last breath, the only face she could see in her mind was Wu Ju's. Fast forward a few years, there is a creepy house that everyone avoids like the plague, because rumor has it that the place is haunted. But the one who is loving here was Biol. She suddenly wakes up and she's not just your average ghost. Turns out, Biol became a Grim Reaper after her death for some mysterious reason. And her job was to escort souls from the living world to the afterlife. When she wakes up, Biol is glued to her TV, which is showing a program about how souls can interact with objects in the living world if they focus really hard. Inspired, Biol decides to try her hand at touching her piano. At first, she fails miserably, but after a few attempts, she manages to touch it and she is thrilled. Looking around her house, it's obvious she's still Wu Ju's #1 fan, with his posters and memorabilia everywhere. But duty calls, and it's time for her job. She opens her wardrobe, which contains exactly 2 outfits: her old school uniform and her Grim Reaper uniform. She gets ready, complete with her signature makeup, grabs her cap, and hops on her bicycle to head to work. And let's not forget her loyal dog, who follows her everywhere since no one else can see Biol. She tells him to stay put. On her way, Biol spots a Wu Ju poster, and her heart skips a beat. Wu Ju is the only thing she remembers from her past life. Her identity, her home, and even how she became a Grim Reaper are all a blur. She only knows one thing: her job is to transport souls. Her assignment for the day comes when she sees an ambulance rushing by. Inside is a little girl, counting her final breaths. Biol heads to the hospital, the hotspot for Grim Reapers, because most souls make their exit from there. She arrives to find many other Grim Reapers already there, waiting for their assignments. After all, the hospital is like their workplace cafeteria where souls are plentiful, and so begins Buell's journey as a Grim Reaper. Is she caught between her love for Wu Ju and her rather peculiar afterlife job? When Biol sees the little girl on the brink of death, her heart sinks. She feels terrible watching such a young life fade away, and seeing the girl's mother sobbing only makes it worse. Outside the hospital room, all the Grim Reapers get visibly nervous when they see Dr. Sori. She's famous for pulling off impossible rescues and saving lives in the duress situations. Naturally, all the Reapers panic and start convincing their assigned souls to move on to the afterlife quickly. Fearing that Sori might snatch another soul away from them, some Grim Reapers have a different agenda, as they don't want to go to the afterlife at all because they prefer wandering in the living world. To achieve this, they need to collect points. The more souls they send to the afterlife, the more points they earn, eventually leading to promotions. But Sori's presence ruins their plans, and they don't like her one bit. And on top of that, she has shown up today on her day off. So Grim Reapers scatter, dragging their souls along. Inside, Sori begins chest compressions on the little girl. After a few moments, the girl's breathing stops and she starts seeing Biol. The child stares at Biol and even reaches for her hand, but Biol hesitates. She knows she's not ready to take such a small child with her. So she lets go of the girl's hand, and miraculously, the girl's vitals improve. Everyone believes Sori has worked her magic again and saved yet another life. But Biol's actions don't go unnoticed. Her senior, Jo Young-ki, sees everything. Realizing she's broken the Grim Reaper rules again, Biol rushes to the washroom, plunges her face into cold water, and berates herself. She hates the idea of taking someone's life and can't bring herself to follow the rules. Meanwhile, Sori steps outside to relax after her intense work. She's completely drained but tries to enjoy a moment of peace. Her friend Hyeon Soo approaches her, noticing her smeared makeup and ruined lipstick. With a kind smile, he hands her his handkerchief and tells her to take care of herself before leaving. It's clear he has feelings for her, but Sori is too tired to read into it. Later, Sori heads to the washroom to fix herself up. When she looks in the mirror, she laughs, realizing she looks like a complete clown. As she starts washing her face, the tap suddenly turns off on its own. That's Buell's doing, of course. Because Biol had been watching Sori and was annoyed, suspecting that Sori had been spending time with a guy during work hours. Seeing Sori's messy makeup only fuels Buell's irritation, but when Biol looks at her own reflection in the mirror, or rather the lack of it, she grows sadder. She can't even see herself anymore.